Good evening, I'm Kevin Schuker and this is Health Box. Tonight we're coming to you again from Bonobo's restaurant, and I'm here with Donna Peroni from Accent on Wellness as part of our ongoing lecture series here at the restaurant. So Donna, who do we have here this evening?
We have Dr. Joel Furhman. He's a medical doctor, and he specializes in preventing and reversing disease using natural and holistic methods. And of course, he's an author. He's written 3 books. His latest is Eat to Live, which is what he's going to be discussing tonight, which is the greatest diet ever. He also has...
yeah, I have one here. We have Fasting and Eating for Health, which is another book by Joel Furhman. And he has a third one, Cholesterol Protection for Life. So he's quite an accomplished author, and we're really looking forward to tonight's lecture. So let's all sit back and enjoy Dr. Joel Furhman.
Because unless we put extra oil and grease and salt and fried it and concentrated and made it so we could fit more calories into that little liter of we have a stomach, it gets filled up too easily on natural food. Put 10 oranges in front of you. How many oranges can you eat at one sitting? You don't want that much. Because hunger doesn't drive you to overeat. You need to have some type of heightened stimulatory effect on the taste buds. Maybe, ice cream with extra sugar, or to salt something, or to fry it. See, living on natural foods, you don't want to overeat. That's how you know Skipper didn't really live on that island. But let's get back to this slide. It says, nutrients present in 100 calories of select foods. Now you can see, the green vegetables, the broccoli and the kale and the lettuce, that's where all the nutrients are. But what about the protein? Which is higher in protein, broccoli or steak? I know you guys probably can't see it in the back, but here's the answer. Okay, I guess you could see it. But here's the answer. Steak comes from a cow, right? And the cow didn't shove its hoof into the soil and sprout roots and suck up the nitrogen through the soil to get its protein. It had to eat it. It had to eat the grass or something else, right? You see, every animal that ever lived on the face of the earth, from the beginning of time, got its protein from the soil, from plants growing in the soil, from green vegetables. The lion or the tiger got its protein from green vegetables. It ate the antelope who ate the green vegetables first. You got that? The Tyrannosaurus rex ate the Brontosaurus who ate the green vegetables. All protein, all nitrogen came from the action of sunlight through photosynthesis to make proteins and amino acids from plants. There's no animals that can make it from the air. So of course green vegetables must have a lot of protein. How else would the other animals have gotten it from? But the bottom line is that steak is 70% of calories from fat. It's only 22% from protein. Whereas green vegetables are usually about 50% of calories from fat and about 20% from protein. Excuse me. Green vegetables are 50% of calories from protein and about 20% from fat. Broccoli is actually 60% of calories from protein and 22% from fat. You see, all calories come from either fat, carbohydrate, or protein. There's no fourth or fifth thing. Fat, carbohydrate, and protein are the only sources of calories. Remember I said earlier that to want to live longer, we have to eat less calories. Americans eat too much fat, they have to eat less. They eat too much carbohydrate, they have to eat less carbohydrate. And they eat too much protein, they have to eat less protein. They have to eat less of all 3 types of calories. You got that? The object is not to balance some magic ratio of fat, carbohydrate, and protein. The real hallmark of what I call the eat to live, and this diet style to enable us to live longer and enjoy our life, is all about eating more nutrients and less calories. It's all about getting as much nutritional bang per caloric buck. And to do that, we have to eat lots of food. We have to eat lots of green vegetables, and we have to eat vegetables both raw and cooked, because when you eat a diet that's all raw, 100% raw, you wind up not eating enough green vegetables. And you wind up eating a diet that's largely, that most of your calories come from fruit or nuts. It's not a vegetable-based diet anymore. By adding some degree of cooked vegetables, like steamed broccoli, or kale, or greens in a soup, or with beans, you increase your proportion of vegetables in your diet. And you increase the nutrient density accordingly. And you lower your caloric density, too. So, what food do you think has the best association with longevity? You guys must know that. Greens, especially green leafy. This was one of my patients 6 months ago before they started the diet. After diet. But you know what? Humans and chimps only differ by 1.6% in their chromosomes. We're only 1.6% different from a chimp and 1.8% from a gorilla. If you went to the Bronx Zoo, you could take a picture of them feeding the gorillas and the chimps, right? You know what they eat. The favorite food of a primate is always green vegetables. All primates eat a huge amount of greens. They don't sit in front of a banana tree and eat bananas all day. But I'll bet you could get a picture of the humans in the front having Coca-Cola, like chocolate chip cookies, potato chips, right? Burgers, and then in the background you'll see what the primates eat, which are vegetables, fruits, nuts, and berries. And then we eat a diet style where even though our diet is grossly deficient in fruits, in these phytochemicals that enable us to live longer, then we put a slab of heavy saturated fat food that plays havoc with the enzyme systems in cells and interferes with their normal function. And the foods that are highest in saturated fat, you can see by this slide, are of course cheese. A couple of ounces of cheese there has 20 to 25 grams of saturated fat. The same size piece of chicken or turkey might have 3 to 4 grams of saturated fat. There's no comparison as to the danger of what people are eating. Most of our children are raised on a diet where they get most of their calories from cheese and butter and sugar, right? Couldn't design a diet to create a cancer epidemic better had we planned it out scientifically and designed it from scratch to kill them. Even the low-fat cheeses are very high in saturated fat. Okay, I'm going to finish up the lecture, which should take me about 5 minutes, and then we'll go, and then I'll take your questions, okay? Okay, here's where we left off. I already told you guys that the USDA, that the way most people eat is they have grains at the base of their pyramid. That really makes no sense at all. And obviously, here's the pyramid in most of my programs, which here I call the Eat to Live food pyramid, where obviously vegetables are at the base. That's why it's called a vegetable-based diet. This is not an all-or-nothing plan, and people do not have to be on a strict vegetarian diet to be able to do this program. You can do it either with a vegetarian diet, or people can have an occasional serving of animal products, just like you can have an occasional serving of white potato or pasta even. But the point is, most of your intake has to be from quality food. And there are actually some biochemical effects that plant protein has that animal protein doesn't have. Plant proteins actually have the effect to lower cholesterol, and animal proteins raise it. So it's not just the saturated fat in animal products. So if a person has a problem with high cholesterol, eating extra skim milk and whites of eggs, and even the lower fat animal products can still have the effect to raise their cholesterol. This slide just is a reminder of that study in the medical journal Metabolism, which showed the vegetable-based program lowered cholesterol 33% compared to 16% on a vegetarian diet, which was not vegetable-based.
LDL and fat, right?
Right. We'll skip through this. We'll skip through osteoporosis, but here's the message. It's that with regard to osteoporosis, the most critical factors are those substances that cause you to lose calcium in the urine, that promote calcium loss down the toilet bowl. And those factors are protein, too much animal protein, salt, caffeine, sugar, of course, alcohol, nicotine, but also, very importantly, is vitamin A. And most multivitamins contain vitamin A, which is one of the leading causes of loss of bone mass. And taking beta-carotene and vitamin A in multivitamins are also linked to higher rates of heart attack and cancer as well. It's not a good idea to take most multivitamins and get excess of those nutrients. It's much healthier to get all our carotenoids from natural foods, not from vitamin pills. As you can see, natural foods are already extremely high in calcium. It's not necessary. When you're eating a healthy diet, you're already getting tons of calcium, all you need, and we're not taking in those factors that also induce calcium loss in the urine. This slide, of course, just demonstrates that the protein content of lentils and tofu and broccoli and spinach have more protein than does cheeseburgers and yogurt and meatloaf with gravy. That plant foods are not low in protein. Matter of fact, some plant foods are exceedingly high in protein. And clearly, when we eat food that has more concentrated calories, like oil and butter and flour, we can get more pleasure, so we think. You see, pleasure in eating has to do with a sensation of taste, mostly in your mouth and tongue. And I'm all for pleasure. If you're eating natural foods, you're going to enjoy what you eat. But why not go after even more eating pleasure? Salt the food, put more sugar on it, put oil over it, fry it. You can get more pleasure out of it. That's great. But what happens over time is the more you hyperstimulate your taste sensations with concentrated sources of calories and concentrated sources of salt, and you lose the ability, your body becomes tolerant to those things, and you weaken and deaden your taste. So now when you go back to eating a pear or a piece of avocado or a pepper, it no longer has any flavor. Now you need the highly stimulating amount of salt. You need all the extra sugar. You need to put fat all over your food. In other words, the more you go after pleasure, the more you weaken and build up tolerance to simple pleasures of eating natural food. When you eat and make your recipes from natural foods, you keep your sense of taste fully heightened. And if you add on top of that eating when you're hungry, natural foods can taste exceedingly better, especially if you know how to make great tasting recipes. Making exotic and gourmet recipes with natural foods that are not salted is the key. You get the best of both worlds. You get gourmet eating without deadening your taste sensations, and at the same time, you're not sick. So it's just a no-brainer. See, this slide shows that beans and fruit and green vegetables are all exceedingly low in calories per pound or per liter. And the foods with the highest nutrient density that you should eat in unlimited quantities are all things that are green, all raw vegetables, because when they're raw, you're not absorbing all the calories. Part of the caloric load is going into the toilet bowl, not totally absorbed anyway. That's why raw foods are so conducive to weight loss, because you don't absorb everything out of it. The non-starchy cooked vegetables, you can eat those foods raw or cooked. Peppers, mushrooms, eggplant, right? Which are naturally very low in calories. Beans and fresh fruit, especially berries, are the foods that a person who's overweight, and even those of us who are not overweight, we want to eat larger amounts of these foods because of their high nutrient density. As we go down the nutrient density line, we want to eat less of those foods that have more calories with lower nutrient per calorie density. Then we eat smaller amounts of cooked starchy vegetables and grains and nuts. I hardly ever eat any cooked starchy vegetables because when I got done with all my raw stuff and with the soup and the green and the other, I don't have much room left. I'm not that hungry. And you know what? They don't taste as good. If you're not putting grease and salt on them, a white potato doesn't attract me as much, just plain starchy vegetables, as much as the more flavorful and colorful vegetables do. When you structure your meal so you eat more of the unlimited foods first, you don't desire as much of those cooked starchy foods. And then, of course, animal products should be held in limited amounts or not eaten at all. And things that are even worse than that, of course, are things like refined grains, flour, oils, cheeses, and meats, and red meats, which are higher in saturated fat. So, that wraps it up. I'll take your questions and answers. This slide just demonstrates some of the features of my online services. And for people who want extra support or to ask me questions or have their relatives or friends be able to contact me, the most economical way is just go right to the website. But you could obviously, I do phone consultations with people with medical conditions and problems from all over the world. And my office is not that far from here either. So that's my contact information, drfurhman.com. And my 800 number is 800-474-WELL. Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll start in the back here and I'll do questions. Yes. She said that she's found out that she developed eczema and is doing better now that she added more certain oils to her diet. So let me clarify that, okay? There's no biological need for oil. Oil is a processed food that's low in nutrient. There is a biological need for fat, however. Now, fat is the preferable way to get fat is by eating raw nuts and seeds and avocados, because then you're getting fat with lignins and phytochemicals and flavonoid, and it's not rancid. It's in nature's protective antioxidant package. I do not recommend people follow a diet exceedingly low in fat. This is not a low-fat Dean Ornish or John McDougall diet. We make dressings from nuts and seeds. A diet could be low in fat, but each person has different needs for fatty intake, and some people on vegetarian diets can develop certain problems because we don't get fish oil from vegetarian food. DHA and EPA, commonly known as fish oil, are not called an essential fat because we can make those fats from the short-chain fatty acids we get from raw nuts and seeds. Nuts and seeds and other oils that Americans eat are mostly omega-6 fats. The only natural foods that are high in omega-3 fats, so she was giving a little bit, she's got a lot of confusing information. You're not quite accurate, because a diet with nuts and seeds is already exceedingly high in omega-6. It could be low in omega-3 fatty acids, which are essential, if you weren't eating flax seeds or walnuts or leafy greens. Flax seeds, walnuts, and leafy greens are rich sources of omega-3 fats. But some people on a vegetarian diet don't convert that short-chain omega-3 from flaxseed and walnuts into longer-chain EPA and DHA. Those people genetically are more fish-dependent. And I do recommend that all my patients and people who follow my plan take a supplement. And I make a vegetarian or vegan EPA and DHA. It's the only EPA and DHA that's vegan in the world. In other words, the DHA, you can buy DHA that's vegan, but now my new one has EPA in it that's vegan as well. And I call it, it's called DHA EPA Purity. I'm not saying that every person on a vegetarian diet needs to take extra DHA and EPA. But when we test people, we find that a good percent, about 20 to 25% of people on vegetarian diets are detected in blood work to be too low in those beneficial fatty acids. As a rule, I generally recommend most of my people who follow my program take one pill a day of DHA and EPA. And if you developed eczema, it wasn't because you were deficient in oils. It was because you were deficient in certain fatty acids, most likely EPA and DHA, and all your fat needs, that's like saying you're deficient in sugar. You don't only take white sugar, but you need carbohydrate. It's best to get your carbohydrates through sugar, through fruit.
My doctor recommended the oils.
Right, so you're getting, right, but you're replacing what you're missing, not in the most ideal form, and what you're saying is kind of confused. You don't know exactly what you're missing. The question is, the fish has mercury, and don't forget, fish has mercury in proportion to the size of the fish, and whether it's a fish-eating fish or a vegetarian-eating fish. And there's pollution in the water, and sea vegetables have some pollution based on where they're caught, right? But certainly because the biological laws of concentration are such, fish collect the dioxin, the PCBs, and the mercury in higher levels in their bloodstream, more so than you would get from eating sea vegetables. But just like whether the fish swims and is caught is important, so is whether sea vegetables are grown that's important too. One thing I want to make clear, though, that we get all our salt needs from the food we eat. Additional salt on your diet in the form of sea salt or Celtic salt can cause unnecessary deaths and is dangerous. And it's more dangerous in a vegetarian than a person eating a regular meat-based diet.
Why?
Why? I'm going to tell you right now. You see, there are two types of strokes. There's hemorrhagic stroke, which is a bleed into the brain by a bursted blood vessel. And there's ischemic or embolic strokes, which are caused by what cause heart attacks. That's caused by a clot. Only 10% of strokes are hemorrhagic due to a burst blood vessel. When you eat a diet rich in saturated fat, it coats the blood vessels with atherosclerotic plaque. The atherosclerotic process that increases your risk of the 90% of strokes that are ischemic or embolic and increases the risk of heart attack, that has protective effects against hemorrhagic or the bursting the blood vessel strokes that are quite deadly strokes. Population-based studies show that people who eat salt in their diet have higher rates of hemorrhagic strokes, and hemorrhagic strokes are higher in populations that have lower rates of heart disease and lower consumption of saturated fat. So in Japan, for example, for many years, they didn't eat a diet rich in meat and rich in saturated fat. They had very low rates of heart attack, but very high rates of hemorrhagic stroke. A lot of Americans, following a lot of nutritional authors, vegetarian diets, are eating diets that are very low in saturated fat, very healthy diets, but they salt everything. So a vegetarian has to be more careful with salt, even than a person who eats meat. Does that answer your question? You kind of understand it? It's hard to. It's complicated. Keep in mind that we want to be in excellent health, and we want to be fit as we get older. And your bone strength, you don't want to live longer than break your hip, or be stuck and you don't have your physical, or be in pain, right? You need muscle mass, you need bone mass. A good test to measure bone mass, to detect osteoporosis, is see how much weight you could lift. Because your bone density or strength is very tightly proportional to your muscle strength. We want to be fit and be strong as we get older because that's reflective of our bone strength and protecting our body as we get older. You follow me? Cardiorespiratory fitness, exercise, and strength are important things to promote longevity and the happiness and enjoyment of our life in our later years. So of course I encourage the right type of exercises and a well-rounded exercise program. I think that natural foods contain the exact amount of fat, carbohydrate, and protein you need. You need all three. You need fat, you need carbohydrate, and you need protein. Now, when you're pregnant, you need a little more calories. You need to eat a little more food because you're getting bigger and you're making a baby. Do you need to specially take more protein at that point? No, because your appetite will increase accordingly, and as your calories go up a little bit, you'll naturally get in the extra protein, the extra fat, and the extra carbohydrate you need. When you're exercising, your appetite will go up in direct proportion to the extra calories you need. And as your appetite goes up, you'll take in a little more protein, a little more carbohydrate, a little more fat. Just exactly what you needed. You don't need to scientifically do anything different. Your appetite adjusts to your caloric needs when you exercise. If you need a little more protein, you'll get a little more. But you don't need to take protein supplements. Because what you do need when you exercise more is you need more nutrients. You need more phytochemicals. You need more vitamin E and C and K. You need everything in direct proportion more. And you get that when you eat a healthy diet. And you just eat a little more of the healthy diet when you're physically fit. Your body is designed to work perfectly.
It's a great fall day here in New York City, and one of the great fall fruits here is the pomegranate, what's called the Chinese apple by some people. Can this great, fantastic antioxidant fruit really help in heart disease? Because everybody's getting heart disease these days. Even the ex-presidents are having to go in for heart surgery. So what do you think? Can this fruit really help? From the Daily Mail, July 13th, 2004, scientists have been telling us for years that red wine and tea are good for us. But new research shows that a daily glass of pomegranate juice could be even more effective at fighting heart disease. The juice of this exotic fruit has been found to slow down the damage caused by cholesterol. It also reduces blood pressure and more than doubles the level of health-boosting antioxidants in the blood. At the Lipid Research Laboratory in Haiti, biochemists have shown that the juice can reduce the size of atherosclerotic lesions. Well, that's pretty good. Dr. Michael Avram, a biochemist at the center, says, the potential exists for high-risk patients to be spared bypass surgery simply by drinking pomegranate juice. And finally, pomegranate juice is also packed with vitamins A, C, and E, and is hailed as a good all-round health elixir which can even help to combat cancer. So how's that for this wonderful fruit? And if I just take one here, I'm going to cut it open for you. When we look inside, we see that it's a very rich fruit. It's got a lot of these wonderful seeds in here. Now we can take this fruit, we can just pick the seeds out here and eat them. They're delicious. You can eat the seeds as well. Or we could put them in a juicer and juice them and drink the juice. What do you think? You really think this simple fruit can help combat heart disease? Let me know what you think. It's exciting stuff.